Alright, it do be your boy Chili here, and we are back with Pantrio. In the last video, I believe I introduced you guys to the wide world of Axios, and we got some interaction going between our front end and our back end. Don't be weird about it. So, what's next? Well, here's the thing. So we're storing our data here in a member of our component for our page. But we're going to have multiple pages, right? We're going to have a page that will let you view the different sections like I've shown you, the basic mock-up that we made. But we're also going to have pages where you can like search, and it will search the data and kind of filter it to whatever you search for and show you like an item and then what sections it belongs in, maybe, I don't know. And then you might have another page it'll generate a list of like a shopping list for you based on what items you have that are out of stock or that are very low. And all these things are going to be accessing the same kind of data. They're all going to be accessing our sections, which contain, arrays of items. But do we really want to load that same data into every single page? In our single page application, like SPAs, you should be able to tap a different tab or whatever, and it should just immediately go there. It shouldn't have to hit the server again and download all that data. So what we want a central place to store all this state. And that is where something called Vuex comes into play. It's a state management library for Vue. And what it basically is it's basically global data. And you might say, Chili, I mean, you've taught me that global data is bad. And I'm like, yes, it is. But when you're sharing the state, as you want to do in this case, it's the lesser of evils in a certain way. Like to try to shepherd that state around through the hierarchy of components is not a fun time. Trust me, I've done it before. I don't like it. Vuex is global, but it has a lot of things in place, for lack of a better word. It's not coming to me right now. Mechanisms. It has mechanisms in place that limit the way you can access the global data and that create a record of basically all the transactions that change that data in such a way that it mitigates a lot of the downsides of having a global to begin with. And so in the end of the day, it's pretty good. And it's pretty much what all reasonably sized Vue apps are going to use. All Vue apps are going to be using Vue Router, and they're going to be using Vuex. We already get Vue Router by Nuxt generates that stuff automatically for us from this folder structure and pages. And Nuxt has a little bit of helping for Vuex, but mostly it's just the same as if you weren't using Nuxt at all. So anyways, I've talked enough about it. I've gotten enough of the foreplay out of the way. Let's just freaking get into it. Let's dive right in here. I want to get it all done in this video, but first things first. Let me see here. Where's my thing? Yeah. So I don't like this this layout here. I've shown you before. I don't like this dead space down here. This boy is too fat. What's up with these headers? They're backwards. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it all. I already fixed it. I played around a little bit, and I figured out all the good ways of fixing, and I'm going to show you them now. So first of all, I want to put H2 around this boy, because he should be big. He should not be small. But this guy is too big. So we're going to make him a little smaller. SMOL, small. Okay, that fixes one thing that I was kind of annoyed about. But there is another. And it is the fact, it's that dead space that you saw at the bottom of every one of those cards. And that is actually caused by Vuetify inserting into there another component called the details. But we're not using the details. So let's freaking hide the details. And that will remove that. And if we go back to our boy, BOI, we see, okay, this is bigger, that's good. This is smaller, and there's no dead space, but this is still fat. How do we fix that? It's very easy, my friends. Dense. We make it dense. go back here and look at that. Beautiful. Hot reloaded, and you could see it right before your eyes. He shrank, and now he's not so bad. Now, I don't like, this is okay, but I kind of want this to be vertically aligned. How do we do? Well, we align things in our row. We align equal to, and I believe you have to put this as a string, center. There you go. I wonder if I could just do it. This binds it as JavaScript data. If I don't do that, it'll just input it as a string. So I wonder if I could just do this. Let's try it out. If it doesn't work, we'll put in the colons. And it worked. Probably. Yeah, it looks like it's working to me. So yeah, beautiful. We've got our layout done. I'm just going to commit this quickly. So next, let's make our Vuex. So we need another directory, Nuxt again. I think it's just called store. So you put files in store, and Nuxt will use those to generate your Vuex state data. So you can separate your state into different modules, and we are going to have a module called I don't know, we'll call it Jank Town. I'll just call it Jank. There you go. Always name your variables and your entities with meaningful names so that you'll remember what they mean. Meaningful names like Jank. You know exactly what I'm doing here. Okay, so what are we going to do here? Well, the one thing that you need, first of all, for Vuex is you need to define the state, the actual data structure of the variables, the things that will store the state. And you do that, export const state, and it should be a function. We'll use an arrow function in here. And yeah, so this is just some JavaScript stuff. Let's not worry too much about it. But what are we going to call the variable? We're going to call it variable. Yeah. And what's its value going to be? It's going to be butts. Okay, so here's our state. So in the module jank, there is a variable called variable. And it starts off with a value of butts. Okay, how do we do this? Well, we go into index. And we can, let's just, I don't know, let's just put some text in here. And we'll go jank here. So we're going to create a getter, computed property, get jank, and it is going to return the value of variable out of the store jank. So how do we do that? Return this dot $store that accesses our Vuex store dot state that accesses the state dot jank. We want the jank module. We want variable. Okay. And this, all right, this is embarrassing. So it says, cannot read property state of undefined, state of undefined, which means that store is undefined, which is very strange to me because if you put store, it should be, Nuxt should pick up on that and inject it into the component. Well, you got to put the freaking store directory into Nuxt. It's not in our Nuxt structure at this point, and that's why it's not picking up on it. So, yeah. That's my bad. All right, now, and here we see it. Okay, so now we finally, okay, we get our thing. Our state is being picked up in index right here and output to here. That's beautiful. Okay, so now what's the next thing? Well, if you want to modify a state, you don't write to it directly. You never directly write to it like from index.vue. You wouldn't do something like, state.jank.variable is equal to some string. That's no good. There's a very specific thing you need to mutate the state, and it's called a mutation. Okay, so we export, similar to state, we export const mutations, and it's an object, and it contains a bunch of functions that we can use to mutate this. Oh man, the burp is out of control. So each one of these mutation functions takes in, first of all, it takes in the state. And then in that function, you're going to modify that state. And it can also take in an optional, payload, or possibly multiple. I don't know. So we're going to take in v for variable, right? Beautiful. And we're going to do state dot variable is equal to v. So now when we want to set, when we call set with a value, variable will be set to that. Very good. Okay. So now what are we going to do? Well, we can use this in Unix. Let's commit our mutation. So the way that Vuex works is you do something like this. You go this dot store dot commit, and you're going to commit a mutation. And then you put the name of it in here. Now, if you look in store here, our module name is jank. So when you're going to commit, you're going to go jank / name of the mutation set. And then you put in the payload. Donk. There you go. So this should mutate that. It should change it from whatever it was, butts to donk. And then we should see donk appear. Let's check it out. Donk. Okay, there you go. So this is how you mutate, how you commit changes to the global state. You don't just set that data, you do it through the proper channel. And that is what is going to, not good for Bluetooth mouse, but anyways, that is what is going to separate Vuex from just having big old global variables. Now, the annoying thing about this thing I don't like is that now you have to remember, the name of the module, and you have to remember the name of the commit. It comes in as a string, right? So you don't get any IntelliSense on that. You don't get any code completion, and I hate that. I love me some code completion. I love me some compiler checking my typos and stuff like that. But Typescript, there was a very good thing that we're going to put in. At the end of this video, we're gonna do it all up sexy with Typescript. But for right now, I'm just showing you the basic JavaScript way of doing Vuex. All right. So you got mutations. You commit mutations. What else you got? The last main thing you have with Vuex is something called actions. Now, actions are like mutations. They mutate the state. Well, okay. So generally, you do an action. It results in the mutation of the state. But the difference between an action and a mutation is a mutation must be synchronous. It must basically happen immediately. There shouldn't be any waiting on something. Whereas an action can have some asynchronous behavior to it. For example, an action can include the task of, connecting to a remote API, downloading data, and then when you get that data downloaded, then you commit. So you wrap those kinds of things up in actions. So how do we do that? Well, let's make an action, and we're going to call it go pee-pee. Yeah. Okay? Don't judge me. Now, how do you spell this? Context. So an action takes in a context, and it can use that context to do lots of things, but mainly to commit mutations. And so we're not going to do any kind of asynchronous behavior yet, but we will in a second. But first of all, let's just do a very simple one. So how you would do this is you would get some data, and then you would do context dot commit, and we're going to commit the name of the mutation. We don't put the slash in front because we're inside the module, and we'll just put some stuff in here. I'll put some sauce on it. All right. So here's how we define our action. How do we actually consume the action? Well, it goes like this: store, dispatch. You dispatch actions, and it goes jank / go pp. And our action did not take any data in the payload. They can, though. It is possible for them to do that. Ours just doesn't. And if we do this, we should see pp. And we do see pp. Okay. Working. So there's your three main things in Vuex. You have your state, you have your mutations, and you have actions. So now in actions, generally what you're going to do for, I think, a majority of them is they're going to encapsulate some kind of asynchronous operation. So we're going to declare this as async. And yeah, let's actually do some asynchronous stuff. So with Vuex, we can go this dot Axios. We can have access. Next injects Axios instance into our Vuex. So I'm just going to paste in the same call that we had inside of our component there. We're going to get the data from our Laravel API, and we're just going to use part of that data to set this string. So we want sections. Actually, it's a string. So let's do it like this. So we're going to go pp poo. Serious development going on here. Sections, and it's an array of sections, so we'll get element 0 of that array, and that'll be an object. It has a name, so we'll just string interpolate that in there. So this should give us the name of the first section, which is, I believe, freezer, and that'll commit that, which will mutate this variable, and this stays the same. So if I go into here and we'll cross our fingers, pp poo freezer, there you go. There you have it. So this is the basic idea of what you do with Vuex. There's more to it, obviously, but there's the thing. And you can have multiple components, and they can all access this state. And whenever one of them mutates it, they're all going to pick that up, and they're all going to reactively change their output in their view. So that's great. It's a good thing. You just got to remember, you're going to commit mutations, or more likely with we're going to be dispatching actions, because we want to change the state, yes, in our application in memory, but also on the server. Or we want to, fetch some state from the server and then load it into our memory. But anyways, here that's the way it goes. All right, now we're going to inject some TypeScript into this. We're going to pump it up. We're going to pump up the jams, and it's going to be a good time. So how do we do? Well, first off, we need a new library. So we are going to do, So I've already done it, but that was in a different branch. That was just my test. So let's do it again. Maybe if I just press up, Vuex module decorators. So just like with TypeScript, we had the class component, and what is it called? View class component and view component. I'm drawing a blank. What is the freaking thing called? View property decorator. Yeah. So now we also have view module decorators. That's going to enable us to basically declare our module here, our Vuex store module, as a class, and we're going to give us some nice syntax, and it's going to give us code completion, and it's going to give us type checking. It's going to give us all the good things that you want. So we're going to rename this. How do we do that? I believe it is Shift F6, and we're going to rename this to jank.ts, not ts, ts. Okay. Now, how does this work? I'm gonna refer to some material here. So we are going to import. So we need a bunch of different decorators and things. Module, mutation, action, and Vuex module from Vuex module decorators. Here we go. Okay, so how does this work? Well, we declare the module at module. This is the decorator for the module, but this is what puts in all the good functionality that we want. Now we're going to say, do we want it namespaced? Yes, we do, because that's what Nux does automatically. And the name for the namespace should match the name of the file, which is jank. Good. Now, export. Default class jank module extends Vuex module. There you go. And that's why we had to incorporate that. I think that's standard style for TypeScript. I can never remember which ones go on a different line. I believe they're all on the same line, right? I'm talking about the curly boy here. So, how do we declare our state? Well, this becomes trivially simple. Variable is equal to butts. There you go. You've just declared a piece of state there. Congratulations. All right, how do we declare mutations? Well, you go mutation, you decorate, and it's just a function. It's just set. So it's v is going to be a string. So let's type that. And then to access the state, that's just on the this. This variable is equal to v. And there you go. You have created your mutation. How do you create your action? Well, probably not going to be surprised at this point. And then we just go async. Well, I mean, it's basically just this, right? So I'm not gonna spend time typing here. Why did I lose my mojo there? Give me back my mojo. Okay. So there you go. Go pp. Now it doesn't take in context because context is just this. Now, one thing you're going to notice here is this Axios. It's not present on this, so we'll have to do something about that. Right now, we're just going to put that on hold. We are going to create const sections. It is an array of anything. We're not going to do any type checking on this. And the array is going to contain a single object with name Kakapo. There you go. All right. And now we don't do context.commit, we do this dot set, and then we don't need the string there. We can just pass this in directly. It's just like works like calling a normal function, and that's a beautiful thing because now we can get IntelliSense on that. It's not called IntelliSense, but whatever PHP Storm likes to call it, doesn't matter. And that's it. This is the equivalent of this. And you might say, well, it's okay. Not that much less typing when you consider that you have to put these decorators on here, but it's a little cleaner in my opinion. Everything is declared as a function, decorated with the role that it plays. State is just a simple member variable. But the real beauty comes in when the point of consumption of this bad boy. So how do we consume this? It's a little tricky. I'm not gonna lie, but it's oh so delicious. So we're gonna import something called get module. It's a little function from Vuex module decorators. This is very important. And we're gonna import jank module from this. Now I believe the TypeScript compiler is going to poop the bed because it doesn't like paths like this, but we'll try it out. And okay, so now we've got that in here. How do we use it? Well, that's where things become very nice indeed. So we are going to create a member variable, call it jank module, and its type is going to be jank module. And we're going to say it's assumed that it just exists. That's what this not here means. So now when we create this thing, we are going to hook up our jank module to our Vuex. How do we do that? This dot jank module is equal to get module. That's this thing we imported here. And we have to pass it the type, which is jank module, and we have to pass it the store, which is the store. And that hooks up the store into this thing, makes it all good to go. And then when we now want to do something on our module, we just go this.jank module dot, what are we going to do? Let's go pp. There you go. You don't have to go, store and then dispatch, and then you put in the string that's the name of the thing with the namespace of the module. No, you just freaking just call the function to do the thing that you want to do, and you're good to go. No, you don't have to pussyfoot around. And then if you want to access the state, you just go jank module, this.jank module dot variable. And there you go. You access the state like that. And there's all the type information in there. Typescript is going to check all your mistakes. It's going to wipe your butt for you. It's going to be beautiful. Now, one problem is that it won't compile. So let's get out of here, because I never trust this. Whenever I get a compile error, I'm like, the first thing is like, okay, run it again. But I'm pretty sure it is just going to give me the same error again. Yeah, it tells me dependency was not found, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't like this tilde, even though tilde should resolve to the folder where nux.config.js is in, and then it should go into resources, and then it should go into nux and store. It doesn't work, and I don't know why it doesn't work. It doesn't matter. You know what? Frick it. What we're going to do instead, first off, so we here are we're in the pages directory. We're going to go up one into store, and then we're going to go in store. We're going to take jank. There you go. And this should work, but I don't like it. But let's just make sure it works first. No issues found. So it compiled fine. Now, does it actually work here? Well, let's restart. Okay, so this underline is telling me, Chili, don't be dumb. You gotta await this because it's an asynchronous call. So let's do that. But I don't think that is gonna fix our problem here. Let's try it out. We're gonna go here. We're gonna refresh. Still doesn't have it. That's gonna go Control F5. You know, the super magic refresh. Okay, it doesn't work. Cannot read property variable of undefined. All right, so it's saying jank module is undefined. So we're gonna leave this. We're gonna run it again. It's something that I don't really understand happened here. So what I did, so here's what we had before, right? It's gonna load. It's gonna say cannot read property variable of undefined. Okay, cool. What if I move this up here? How's that? Refresh. Now it's cool. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why it works when it's up here, but it doesn't work if it's down here. That is very baffling to me. One thing that might make sense to me is when it tries to render this thing, it's gonna call this, and it's gonna call jank module. But if jank module hasn't been set yet, it'll give an error. So I mean, what we could do is so we're gonna say, okay, so this thing is either gonna be jank module or it's gonna be undefined. It's gonna be one of those things. And then if this.jank module is equal to null, so we do the loosey-goosey equals, and that checks for null and undefined. So it's equal to that, you just return empty string. Otherwise, actually access the module, return the variable state there. And now, if I do this, my spidey sense is telling me that it'll maybe work. It doesn't work. Well, I mean, it doesn't error out now, but now it's just undefined, right? So it kind of makes sense for me why this ordering is important, because this is an asynchronous operation. So when it hits this, it is not going to immediately go to the next line. It's going to take a long time, and stuff is going to get rendered in that meantime. So this happening first, make sure that this is set up so that when rendering happens, this is going to be available. So what if I set this to null? So it can either be jank module or it can be null. It has an initial value, so it exists when this thing is actually constructed. And because it exists, it might trigger the reactivity when it gets set later on. And then that reactivity would cause this to be redrawn with the actual value. That's what my hunch is. So let's do this. Yeah, and here it is. Okay. So if you don't want this to be highly dependent on the timing of what happens, I think the smart money is to give this thing a value from the beginning so that it has a value when it hits this. The value can be null, but it has to exist as a variable. And because if you just declare it like this, but you don't assign it any value, in the JavaScript, the variable won't exist at all, not until you actually assign to it. So this makes sure that it exists with null. Because it exists now, this computed property is going to hook into that, and when we set it, it will recompute and it will output. Whereas before it wasn't recomputing because jank module didn't exist at all. It was just undefined. All right, so that makes sense. It was a little bit of a detour, I'm not going to lie. Didn't want to take that much time to look into things, but it was good knowledge. It was interesting for me as well. And most important thing, now we have our sexy code completion. Whenever we want to access stuff in our Vuex store, it's going to be very nice. We can have all the Alzheimer's in the world and we'll still be able to code her up. All right, so that is the Vuex. Now, here's the tricky thing. It's a little tricky. So this Axios, this Nuxt Axios instance, it doesn't get injected when we're using the module, what do you call it? Module decorators here. But we want access to this Axios. We could import just standard Axios and use it. But the thing is when the Nuxt Axios in your Nuxt config, you can feed it. I don't know if I have anything in here, but you can actually feed it configurations, and that's useful. And then, but if we don't get that same instance in here, then we'll have to set those configurations again in multiple places. I don't want to do that. I want the one instance that we already have in Nuxt. How do we do it? Well, we're going to create a Nuxt plugin. So create this directory plugins, and we're going to create a new Typescript file. Nuxt Axios exporter.ts. Okay, so what is all this happy crappy? Well, we want to make a plugin for Nuxt in TypeScript. We import plugin from Nuxt/types. Okay. We import plugin. Now, we're going to import the type of the Axios instance, which is Nuxt Axios instance. We're going to import that from Nuxt.js/Axios. We are going to create a global variable, Axios, and its type is going to be Nuxt Axios instance. And what we're going to do is for a plugin, you create a function, and then when Nuxt is initializing, it will execute that function, and it executes that function with a context. So we do const Nuxt Axios extractor plugin, and its type is plugin, and it is a function. So we'll use an arrow function. It takes in a context, and what is it going to do? Well, that context is going to have all the things. For example, it's going to have the Axios. So now we set our global Axios equal to context.axios. So we extract it from Nuxt. We set it in here, and then we're going to export that. And we're also going to export the default export of this, which is going to be the Nuxt Axios extractor plugin, the actual function. And this is how Nuxt knows what to execute as a plugin for this. So we create the plugin, then in Nuxt config.js, we go into our plugins, and we say, hey, I got a plugin for you right here. plugins nuxt axios exporter.ts. So load this bad boy. It's going to load it. That'll execute that thing. That will set that global. Then in our stores, in our Vuex stuff, our modules, we will go import axios from resources nuxt plugins axios export. Now, I don't believe that this is going to work. It's the same problem as before. So we are in store. So we'll go up one, then we'll go into plugins nuxt, and that'll work. We import this. Now we use the axios get sections, and now we don't need this. And this should now turn it such that we have the freezer. But I believe we have to exit once and run it again because we added a plugin. We also changed the central nuxt config, and that generally means that we're going to have to reload that stuff all up. All right, so compiled fine. I'm going to look in here. We're going to reload, and here you go. We now have access to Axios, and it's beautiful, and it has, again, all the TypeScript information that we love and know, and we use it to get our state. So this is basically the stage set. Now we have Vuex set up, we have it set up with TypeScript, and we have Axios injected so we can use it. In the next video, we're actually going to start to create the logic and the database stuff for our project. On the Laravel side, we're going to create the basics of the database schema, just a rough draft, and a very simple API, and then we're going to hook that in to our front end here, our front end that has been sexified, and it'll actually load real data from the database. And if we change these values, it should update these quantities in the database. Until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like button, helps a lot. And I will see you soon with some more Pantrio.